Time now for the Sunday Talk, where we tap into the debate of the week. After a slew of policy announcements, Canada emerged with a new brand. How real is it? Justin Trudeau's bromance with Barack Obama continues with this carefully staged dinner and photo op in Montreal this week. As Trudeau gave a big thumbs up to Obama, earlier that day, his foreign affairs minister delivered a big thumbs down to Donald Trump.
The fact that our friend and ally has come to question its mantle of global leadership puts into sharper focus the need for the rest of us to set our own clear and sovereign course.
It's a rebranding of Canada. As America turns inwards, Chrystia Freeland says Canada must step up to tackle the big global issues.
A Fortress Canada approach is not going to be an approach that will maintain our prosperity.
The next day, more muscle from the defense minister.
If we're serious about our role in the world, we must be serious about funding our military.
A promise to increase the defense budget by 70% over the next decade. Meanwhile,
how does your wife feel about you being named the sexiest politician alive?
Trudeau is working on his own brand on the Live with Kelly and Ryan show in Niagara Falls this week.
I have one daughter, and there is something very special about imagining a woman prime minister.
Abroad. And with regular Canadians.
That any day I can get out on the water with this.
Very nice.
Call this work.
So, has Canada been rebranded, or is it just more branding for Justin Trudeau? I'm joined by our panelists. Lincoln Anthony Blades writes about politics for Teen Vogue and Rolling Stone. Jonathan Kay is an author and freelance columnist. And tonight we have Robin Urbach joining us. She's the editor of CBC.ca's opinion section. So, Robin, I'll come to you in just a sec, but I'm going to start with John. So we saw the foreign affairs minister basically thumping Trump, and that evening we see the prime minister dining with Obama. What's the message here? What's the bigger picture? What's going on?
I don't think there's that big a deal with Trudeau dining with Obama. If I were the prime minister and Obama were in our country, I'd have dinner with him too. I just think that's something people would want to do. In terms of the actual announcement about the military, I actually think it's a very clever play by the Liberal government, because don't forget, a couple of weeks ago, Trump was saying that Canada and other NATO members had to pull their weight and had to pay more for their military. Canada has found a very clever way to basically do what Trump wants us to do, which is to pay a higher percentage of our GDP for military, while at the same time posturing against Trump. So I think Trudeau is going to have his cake and eat it too. He's going to make Trump happy because he's going to accede to his wishes. At the same time, he's not going to present himself to the Canadian electorate as having given in to the Americans. So I actually think it's a very clever play on Trudeau's part.
Is it that clever? Is it what Canadians want, Robin? What do you think's going on?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't see it sort of as a clever play as much as this Liberal government kind of trying to brand itself as the opposition or the sort of honest country coming out where the U.S. has potentially abdicated its role on the global stage. Canada's coming forward. If you look at Chrystia Freeland's speech, for example, a lot of hay was made of the fact that it was sort of like a subtweet to the Americans, and she sort of undermined everything that the American government was about without actually saying Trump's name. But I think that's actually really important because she's a smart cookie. If she wanted to get the Americans' attention, she would have put Trump's name in there. She didn't. It was a big subtweet, but no one in the U.S. was really paying all that much attention. And the especially interesting part, I think, was that the part where she addressed the Americans directly, she said, "To America, this is for you," she pivoted to French. So I actually think that the message is one that's to be interpreted for a Canadian audience rather than an American audience. I think we like to think of ourselves as sort of thumbing our nose at the Americans, but I think all of this messaging really is designed for a Canadian audience.
What's your sense, Lincoln? I mean, is this image polishing for the PM or a real rebrand?
So my general take on things is that sometimes more than one thing can be true at the same time. I think this is huge because there's something happening that has never happened in my life. It's never happened in your life, never happened in anyone here's life. There is a vacancy for the leader of the free world. there is a literal vacancy. There is no one in that seat. And what you're seeing with Freeland's speech, what you're seeing with the way that Trudeau is positioning himself with Obama, is that he is effectively campaigning for that job. And he's not the only one. There's a couple, I'd say there's 3 people, who are actively campaigning for that job right now.
Emmanuel Macron?
Yep.
Angela Merkel?
Merkel's in the lead. So if I had to rank it like it was sports, Merkel's in the lead, Macron's in second, very, very close behind, and then Trudeau would be there right third.
Is Trudeau that serious, Robin?
I don't think he's actually in the running. I mean, if you look at the defense spending announcement, for example, I mean, a lot of hay has been made of, okay, we're finally going to bolster our military. Canada's military, even if the defense policy announcement is fulfilled, all of the sort of planks along the way, and we get everything that we've been promised this past week, we're not going to have a military akin to the U.S.'s military. It's not going to happen. What this promise is a move to sort of remedy all of the deficiencies that have been inherent in our military and our defense forces for the past several decades, but we're not going to have that sort of autonomous national defense force that the Americans have. We're always going to be reliant on our allies.
I don't think it's about autonomy. I think it's just about being the leader. Right.
But don't you need, if you're going to be the leader, how can you be a leader if you're saying, well, our military is kind of okay, we got some new, subs and supply ships, but we still need your help?
I'm going to bring Jonathan in. We saw Kelly Ripa and Emmanuel Macron, I can't believe I put them in the same question, sort of making googly eyes at the Prime Minister. Are we, as Lincoln is suggesting, sort of number 3 on the global power list?
Look, there was a great British historian who came to Toronto a few months ago, Timothy Garton-Ash, and he gave a speech, and this was right after Brexit. This was also after Trump's election, and he said to the crowd, Canadian crowd, he said, there are 2 great leaders now standing up for traditional liberal Western values, and one is Angela Merkel, who has a tougher job because of the mass migration that's taking place in Europe, and the other is Justin Trudeau. And the audience, you can hear them kind of gasp, because we don't think of our leaders in those terms. But it is true, now we have a third Macron, that these are the primary planks that are protecting traditional Western values, and it's not so much that Canada and France and Germany have changed, it's that so many other nations have abandoned those values. So we are leading, I would say, essentially by holding on to the values that maybe 10 years ago all Western countries believed.
But Robin, you've written about, we saw all of those pictures of him on the TV shows and in the kayak and so on, that a lot of it is quite staged. Is it real?
I think, to a certain extent, every selfie that we see, or the kayaks, or the decision to have Chrystia Freeland go out there and kind of thumb her nose at the Americans, these are all calculated decisions. So nothing's happening spontaneously, and I think the message that Canadians are supposed to get from this is that if the U.S. is sort of stepping aside and Trump is pulling in this new sort of isolationist policy...
But even like that photobomb, you wrote about that picture of the Prime Minister jogging behind people on the seawall, that it was fake.
Well, I mean, the encounter might have been real, but the messaging, the way that we are absorbing it, is very calculated. These are decisions. I mean, we saw it right from the beginning. After Trudeau was elected in 2015, he got on the subway the next morning, and he went on the metro, and he was talking with people in Montreal, and the message was very clear there. It wasn't an accident. It was, I'm going to be your prime minister, and I'm going to be a very different prime minister.
So is that bogus, Lincoln, or is it smart?
Well, the thing that we should be talking about is the impact, and I think that this is where the conversation is going to eventually shift to when it comes to politics, especially with what we've seen in the UK. The new thing that we should be looking at is the impact that it has on youth voters. Is it galvanizing people? Is it polarizing people? What effect is it having on the youth voters? Because the youth voters are going to be the ones who are going to make sure that they determine who's going to be in office and who gets out of office. And we're going to see that.
They like those things. They don't see them as dumb. Like,
but see, here's the thing.
Older people roll their eyes when they see those.
Yeah, so I write mostly in the United States, right? And when I'm writing for people in the United States, they're not necessarily as savvy about maybe how staged things are, right? So when you see, the meme I saw was, here's Trudeau, and this is what they do in Canada, and you see him, and he paddles up, and there's no higher thinking beyond that. There's no was that staged? Do you think that he maybe got actors? They're just like, that's cool. Our guy doesn't do that, and that's sort of how they look at it.
Robin's jaded attitude, I think, is just all too Canadian. Is that for decades we're tired of being ignored on the world stage, and then finally we get somebody who's hot internationally, and we just we turn around and say, oh my God, this thing has been staged.
And the word hot is key.
Sorry?
The word hot
Well,
that
that's
he
a
used
whole
is
other
very key.
conversation.
But I think it's important.
I mean,
it's not mutually exclusive when you have substance and flash. Last week, NPR, they did this great interview with a bunch of voters. They were in a pub in England, and they did not vote in the British election. And the reporter said, why didn't you vote? And the guy said, we have no one who inspires us, no one who inspires young people like Macron and Trudeau. And I said, that's amazing. And what he meant by inspirational wasn't just the policy. It was the fact that it's somebody with flash and vigor who actually got people excited about politics.
And yet in the UK election, we saw they were talking about the youthquake.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't expect in the UK that youth would come out to the degree that they did. And that's sort of...
Wait, who's we?
All right. Us jaded folk.
But imagine
didn't expect
Corbyn
it.
with Trudeau's photo appeal. Then you'd probably have a Labour majority.
But I think young people are smarter than that, though. I mean, we see Trudeau.
I don't think so. I think they're
fair
less
enough.
smart than
I
that.
mean, we see his socks and we think they look lovely. But a lot of people, I mean, a lot of young Canadians are very upset, for example, that the Liberals haven't decriminalized marijuana before legalizing it, or that Trudeau abandoned his electoral reform promise. So yes, I mean, it's nice that he's inspiring and he takes great selfies and his hair is fantastic or whatever, but there are bigger issues, and I think...
But
Last point to you, Lincoln, and then to John.
I would say that the meme that you hear the kids use on social media, the kids are using, is get you a man that can do both, right? So it's all about authenticity on both sides. We are not shallow. And when I've said this about last year's election, when Hillary Clinton went to dance with Ellen because she thought that was going to get young black millennials to think she's cool because she can do the Dougie or whatever, that didn't work out. Yeah. So when you look at what Justin Trudeau is doing, this seems authentic, even if it's not authentic. But his policies are also good too.
I think it's important that as well as the optics, we also have substance. And at the end of the day, you have Trump and the Americans who are obsessed with the idea of Canada and other Western allies being parasites. I think we've anteed up. We're not parasites. We're giving more to defense. So he's putting substance behind the flash.
Thanks so much to all of you. Very interesting.